Hi, I'm Dave Cassilo of Northeast Ohio Media Group, and I'm joined today by Mark Kern and Bill Landis, and we are unveiling the top 100 players here on the Varsity Blitz Elite. And it is a list that took a lot of time to compile, and you can check the entire list after the show airs and check out and see if your favorite players or favorite schools are on there. And make sure to come tomorrow and check out the top 25 list, top 25 best teams in all of Northeast Ohio. While we're unveiling this list here live on the show, make sure to tweet at us. You can tweet hashtag NEOVarsity. Be in the comment section. Bill over there, he's got the iPad. He's going to be able to answer. He's going to bring up the questions so we can answer them as a group. So it'll be a pretty exciting little show here to talk all about the top 100 players. And start things off, Bill, why don't you talk a little about how this list was put together?
Sure. Basically, it was a compilation of our entire staff, looking back at 2013, seeing what kids did there, monitoring awards and things like that, all Ohio, all conference, all league. Also kind of monitoring the recruiting boards, which players are getting more buzz than others, which players have committed and to which schools. So it was really a wide variety of things that went into it. And it was really tough to narrow it down to 100. We probably could have done 200 if we really wanted to. But it was fun, albeit tough.
Now, we're going to start this team off with the quarterbacks, and we've got a lot of them here. We've got, I think it's 15 altogether, and when you talk about a good team, every good team needs to have a strong quarterback, it seems like, to succeed in high school football. We'll start things off with you, Mark. Why don't you talk about one of those players who, was sort of a given to be on this list?
Absolutely. A lot of the top teams, as you said, David, if they're going to win these state titles or make it deep in the playoffs, they need strong play from quarterback. And obviously one of the top ones in the area is Brett Keene. Bill, you and I have kind of went back and forth on who we think's the top quarterback. But Brett, great player at St. Edward, has a lot of weapons with the Dow brothers and Sean Crawford and Alex Stump. But he just did a really good job last season, 32 touchdowns, a school record. And I just think, Bill, when you look at the receivers he has and the ability he has throwing the ball, the short game, and also can throw it deep, he's really, really a great quarterback.
And I feel like you can't talk about Brett Keene without the next sentence being, what about Mitch Guadani at Hudson? Bill, he's a guy that you've gotten to know pretty well. Talk a little about him.
Yeah, I think Mark and I did a podcast about the top quarterbacks in the spring, and we think we kind of decided that Brett and Mitch were 1 and 1A or 1A and 1B, pretty much on an even level. Brett obviously has, I think you can say, more weapons than Mitch does, but what Mitch brings, in addition to throwing the football, I think, is that added dimension of being able to run. He had, I believe it was 900 rushing yards last year. Really, really kind of deadly with his legs. And you might not think that when you first see him. He looks maybe more like a kind of a prototypical pocket passer, but he's not. He can play that way if he wants to. But a gifted runner and one of the best talents we have in Northeast Ohio.
Now, you've got those two QBs, but as I said, there's 15 on the list. Mark is another guy that has really caught your eye in the preseason that could really have a nice year this season.
I think one of the quarterbacks, Bill and David, is Brian Scheffler from Benedictine. This is a team in Division IV, big-time state aspirations with a lot of talent, Justin Lane at receiver. And I think when you look at these teams, obviously Jerome Baker and defenses are going to focus on him and Dantes Rash. So I think it's going to enforce Brian Scheffler, if he's able to really play the quarterback position well, I think you could see potentially he take his Benedictine team to the state title.
And Bill, what about the QB down at Orange? I mean, good quarterback over there.
Yeah, Stephen Borgman, I think he gets overlooked a bit, whether it's playing at a smaller school or maybe he's further outside of Cleveland, maybe people don't pay as much attention to him. But nearly 3,000 passing yards last year, 33 touchdowns. The number that I like with him is he completed 65% of his passes. He's got good size. He's got his best receiver back this year in Chris Von Hendricks. So I think we can expect big things out of Borgman again this year.
And another guy that's really kind of caught my attention was David Murray at Nordonia. I mean, here's a guy who puts up big numbers and sort of gets lost in the shuffle when you've got all these Division I players like Justice Alexander, Denzel Ward, who's going to Ohio State. But David Murray, I mean, you know what you're going to get out of him. I mean, he's going to make that offense click. He's going to find Alex Alders. Nordonia, he's crucial to their success and if they have these state title aspirations. Finally, let's talk about a breakout performer at quarterback. Bill, who is the guy to watch this year?
I think the guy to watch is Jake Sopko out at Avon. He's a junior this year. He saw some time last year as a sophomore. Really put up some nice numbers and played really well, splitting time with Tommy Glenn last year. Glenn got most of the snaps. He's since graduated. He's going to walk on at Toledo. Salko now is the guy at Avon. He's got 2 years now to be the number one guy. He's always going to have good weapons around him being at Avon. And I think by the time his career is done, he's going to be one of the players we talk about as being one of the best in the area.
All right, before we're done with quarterbacks, I want each of you to make your cleveland.com pick. Who is going to be on our all-star team at the end of the year?
Bill, I think we're going to do exactly how we did on the podcast early in the year. I just think with Brett Keane and the weapons he has, I think he's going to put up huge numbers.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough to knock Keane off that perch as the all-star quarterback just because of those numbers. But I'll go with Guadagni, play devil's advocate a bit. I'll go with Guadagni. I think he'll have comparable numbers to Keane, probably more rushing numbers, and probably I think you can argue more important to his team.
I'll break the tie and go with Brett Keane. I think he's going to be tough to beat this year. He's just sort of that natural passer who, as you said, just has all that talent around him, and it's going to be tough. But let's move over to the running backs. You know, just as important to a team as a good quarterback, it's the good running back in the backfield racking up the yards. Mark, to start things off, who is a running back that everyone should know at this point of the season?
Really, guys, this is the deepest position on this list. We have 18 running backs. Obviously, Jerome Baker, we'll get more into him at the linebacker, but there's a lot of Andrew Dow at St. Edward is a very good runner as well. And I think this is the class, this running back class, as much as the quarterback position, Bill, will really influence how far these teams go.
And it's not just Andrew Dow. Bill, who's another guy you've got your eye on?
Marvell Ross at Villa Angela St. Joseph put up crazy numbers last year as a junior. He's back for his senior season. Almost 2,000 rushing yards. That's not even mentioning what he did in the passing game. I believe it was about 400 receiving yards as well. 36 touchdowns. The name of his game is speed, but he's shifty, he's fast, he can be strong if he needs to be. Really kind of a complete back. And then Eddie Doherty at Menor, he was on our all-star team last year. We basically had to create a position for him last year because he's a tailback, but he's also a slot back. He caught the ball more than he ran it, but he still had almost 1,000 rushing yards in addition to more than 1,000 receiving yards. So almost over 2,000 yards last year for Eddie Doherty. And I expect probably more this year from him because he's really the focal point of that offense.
Now, the players that you just named, they've got a lot of talent around them. So, I mean, Eddie Doherty's going to have a big year, but if Eddie Doherty doesn't have his best game, Menor could still win. We've got a couple other running backs here that are just workhorses, where their team needs to really just hand them the ball and ride them to the postseason. Mark, who's one of those guys?
I think the first one to start off with is Demario McCall. At North Ridgeville last year, the first 3 games, he was putting up numbers you just don't see anywhere in the country, over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. And he's a guy with not a lot of talent on the team, as much talent as some of these other guys. So I think when you look at him, defenses are really focusing in on him, and the fact he still puts up those numbers is big time.
And then, Bill, what about a one of those type players for you?
I'll go with Todd Sibley. He's a sophomore this year at Archbishop Hoban. As a freshman last year, 1,200 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns. He was on some national lists as a freshman All-American after last season. He's on some national lists as a sophomore preseason All-American heading into this year. Really gifted running back, a kid who's not quite yet, I mean, he doesn't have any offers yet, but he'll certainly be one of the bigger names in the area when it comes to recruiting, probably maybe at some point this year, but certainly heading into his junior year, but definitely a player you should be keeping an eye on in 2014.
And then you've got Richard Worship at Valley Forge, Purdue. He'll be headed there, and he's a terrific athlete and who can really rack up the yards. Before we get to the breakout player, one of the running backs that you guys mentioned, Eddie Doherty, he joined us earlier this preseason to talk about what the Cardinals need to do in 2014, and we've got a video clip for him right now.
That big playability and also the run game too.
So that's Eddie Doherty. Obviously, he's going to have a tremendous season, and he sort of had his breakout last year. Who is a running back that is going to break out this year, Bill?
I'll say Andy Isabella at Mayfield, and it might sound strange to say he's going to break out this year after having more than 1,000 total yards last season, but that was in split duty. He's the number 1 back this year. He averaged 8 yards per carry last season, which is kind of absurd, 8 yards per carry, but he's also a threat in the passing game. He's not splitting carries anymore. He's going to be the man in that offense. He's got an offer from Air Force. I suspect more will come once he gets that senior year highlight tape and starts putting up even better numbers than he did last year.
Yeah, Nordonia plays Mayfield week 1. I just talked to Jeff Fox there at Nordonia, and he said he's worried because he's got the reputation to be one of the fastest athletes out there. He's a very talented track and field athlete as well. Mark, who's another breakout running back to watch out for?
Guy I'm looking for is Shantez Moss from Bedford. He's the focal point at the running back position. Another one of those guys that really split carries throughout the season. I think now that he's the focal point of this offense, and Bedford, that's a team with big-time aspirations as well. I think he's got a shot to really have a big year.
All right, once again, who is the running back on the cleveland.com All-Star team? Mark, we'll start with you.
Start with me. Okay, I'm going to go a little surprise here. I'm going to go Todd Sibley from Hoban.
Wow.
I think as great as he was as a freshman, I think a lot of times you see guys get better from their freshman to sophomore year. And I think he could be flirting with a 2,000-yard season. So I'm going to go Sibley.
That's bold. He will have a good offensive line in front of him. My all-star running back, I'll say Andrew Dow. Eddie Doherty was an all-star last year. Like I said, we had to kind of create a position for him. If you're talking pure running back, I'll say Andrew Dow. Almost 1,000 yards last year. Expect probably more of that this year. He's going to play both ways, so we'll see how that affects his offensive output, but definitely one of the better backs in the area.
And I'll go Doherty. The very fact that we had to create a position for him last year, I think he'll find a way on the team. I would say as long as he stays healthy, Matter's going to keep rolling, and so will he. So those are the quarterbacks, the running backs. Now it's receivers and tight ends, and this is really an area where Northeast Ohio has started to flourish over the last couple of years. We're getting some big-time recruits in this area. We'll start with you, Mark. Who is a receiver right now that you would say, all right, I want him on my team. You can throw him the ball, and he's going to haul it in and put up big numbers?
I'm going to go Justin Lane from Benedictine. He's got offers from Florida, Michigan, Michigan State, a lot of big-time offers. And just as a junior this year, still got a lot of time to grow. I think he needs to get a little bit stronger, but his potential is off the charts. Saw him last year against Cleveland Central Catholic, took back the kickoff in the final seconds to get a huge victory. And I just think he's a great player now, but his ceiling is just big time.
And what about a familiar last name around here, Tyler Tupa of Brecksville?
Yeah, Tyler Tupa, the last of the Tupas to come through Brecksville, and from all accounts, he might be, with the exception of his dad, might be the best one to come through there. He's got good size. Another kid that plays both ways. Recruiting kind of heating up right now. I guess it started a little slow for him, I would say, but Bowling Green, Kent State teams that have offered already. 854 receiving yards last year, 10 touchdowns. Can't really complain about that. It'll be interesting to see because he had his brother throwing to him last season. He doesn't have that this year. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how he builds that rapport with the new quarterback, but certainly poised for a big season.
And probably our best tight end in this area would be C.J. Conrad of Keystone. Just a big, hulking target. Keystone, one of those smaller division schools, but he still puts up big numbers. Schools still like him. He's going to Kentucky. And he was here for our media day, and C.J. Conrad spoke about what it's like to face double teams when he's running the offense for Keystone.
The team. Mm-hmm. So, the more people that are trying to focus on me, the more other people are going to have.
So that was C.J. Conrad, and he doesn't put up the biggest numbers because that's really not the style that Keystone plays at times, but he's still attracted a lot of national attention. Mark, who's another receiver or tight end that doesn't really put up big numbers, but could go to college and become an elite player?
I think it's another tight end built. Luke Farrell from Perry. Only 3 touchdowns last season, but they're more of a grinder. He's more of a lineman in this offense. But with offers from Ohio State and Michigan, I think this is a guy who, once he gets to the next level, will really be able to showcase his pass-catching abilities, and I think he's a guy that could have a very good career in college.
Bill, who's another player that fits that mold?
Darius Jones, wide receiver at Twinsburg, 429 yards last year, only 2 touchdowns, but the kid is a big playmaker. Twinsburg has had some issues at quarterback. Could be some of the same this year. They're trying to work in some new guys, and that's not the fault of the kids playing QB. But Darius Jones is a guy, if you get the ball in his hands, he can definitely make plays. He's got an offer from Eastern Michigan currently. Could see some more Division I interest as the season wears on. But an explosive athlete, great size, great speed.
And then there's Kiera Hawkins of Maple Heights, sort of that tight end H-back type player. Don't be surprised, I was talking to their coach recently, if we might see an Ohio State offer at some point. He already has a Nebraska offer. He's one of those guys who's going to sort of blow up as the year goes on if he plays well. Mark, give me a breakout wide receiver or tight end.
Going to go Moses Marshall from Brush. Last year, he's more the number 2 option, not the focal point of that team, but now he becomes that guy. I think a lot of the receivers in this area are going from the number 2 to now where they're going to be the guy that quarterbacks are looking for, and I think he's going to have a big year this year.
If I can chime in too on Marshall, Dave, the way that Brush is going to succeed this year is running the football. Like, they have a really strong stable of running backs, and with that comes a pretty strong play action game, and Moses Marshall, a huge target in the middle of the field, short passes off play action. I think he can have a really big season on plays like that.
And we're going to go right now to the cleveland.com all-star pick at receiver, tight end. Give me 2 players. This is obviously a deep position. Mark?
I'm going to go Justin Lane and Alex Stump from St. Edward. Stump, a terrific player, maybe Keen's favorite target, the way he runs routes, best route runner in the area. And I think those 2 are just big-time players. Both of them have the ability to really change the game.
I'll agree with one of yours. I'll say Alex Stump for sure will be an all-star in 2014. And then I'll say Tyler Tupa. The reason I won't say Justin Lane is I think because Benedictine runs the ball so much, Justin Lane's numbers might not be as good as Tupa's. Tupa definitely more vital to that Brecksville offense. So Tyler Tupa, Alex Stump would be my 2 picks for All-Stars.
And we're about to go into offensive linemen now. Before we do that, we want to remind everyone, hashtag NEO Varsity, get your comments in. Comment on the webpage on cleveland.com where this is being broadcast right now. We'd love to hear from you and answer your questions live right now. But it is time for the offensive linemen, and it all starts up front for a lot of these teams. Mark, who is an offensive lineman that you just can't ignore?
I'm going to go Cameron Bell from Nordonia, the biggest person I've ever seen. He is just getting better and better too. Bill talking, he's lost some weight, getting stronger, and I think he's a guy for a Nordonia team that has a lot of potential. And as you said, David Murray, quarterback. Mm-hmm. It's nice as a quarterback to know you have that guy blocking for you. So I'm going to go Cameron Bell.
Yeah, I'm 6'5", 300 plus pounds, and I felt very small standing next to Cameron Bell. I would say for one of my top linemen, Ted Stieber out at Archbishop Hoban, 6'6", another kid who made me feel kind of small, 295 pounds, Minnesota commit, and really vital to Hoban because they like to run the ball so much, and he's kind of the anchor there at left tackle.
And Ted, he was in for our media day as well, and he talked about improving on the 5-5 season that Archbishop Hoban had last year.
Putting in the work, just continuing to work hard. Like Coach said, work hard in the weight room, and just keep.
And Bill, I'm surprised we haven't talked about him yet, but St. Ignatius, they've got a pretty talented offensive lineman as well.
They do. Liam Eichenberg, he'll be the tackle there this year. Junior, 6'5", 284, Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State. I suspect that you'll see more of the top 25 college programs in the country coming after Eichenberg as well. Just a really good talent, pretty athletic for an offensive lineman too.
And Mark, when you look at the offensive line, we named a lot of guys who are going to be big-time recruits. But every offensive line has that guy who kind of is the glue guy, puts it together. The team would not really play well without him. Who's one of those guys in Northeast Ohio?
For me, Dave, it's Dan Petticord from St. Edward. This is a team, if you look at St. Edward, really maybe the only question mark on this team is the offensive line with so many guys gone from last year's line. And I think Petticord, he's the type of player that he can play multiple positions on the line. And obviously, as a Princeton commit, very intelligent kid, so he can do a lot of directing the linemen where the blitzes are coming from. So I think he's going to be very important as kind of a help to Brett Keene to read the defense.
And Bill, there's a kid at Columbia who's making some roads that Columbia athletes haven't really had in a while.
Yeah, Brandon Heidecker, he's the first football player to earn a Division I scholarship at Columbia. He's committed to Toledo. 6'6", 305. We talk about, I think, a word people throw around is anchor a lot when you're talking about the offensive line. He truly is. He is a vital part of not only that line, but that team. And when you're talking about playing in the Patriot, and you can toss a kid out who's 6'6", 305, you're not going to find very many kids in that league who are even close to that size. So definitely a big advantage for Columbia.
Bill, give me 2 offensive linemen that would be on the cleveland.com All-Star team right this second.
Right this second, I would say Liam Eichenberg and Ted Stieber for sure, 2 supreme talents up front.
Mark.
I'm going to go Eichenberg as well, but I'm going to go Cameron Bell from Nordonia. I think that's a scary 2-tackle tackled right there.
That's a lot of human beings.
Well, I'm sure we'll find probably all 3 of them.
Yeah.
There are 5 spots. So now when we look at the offense, A lot of guys here. I think we just had 12 offensive linemen. We had a lot of quarterbacks, running backs, receivers. Still some guys that just missed the cut. Bill, who are some of those guys?
Yeah, just a few who were kind of tough to cut off. John Davies, a quarterback at Green. Bobby Cole, quarterback at Strongsville. Going to wide receivers, Jalen Harris at Cleveland Heights, who just transferred over from VASJ. Brandon Brown at Central Catholic, who's one of my favorite players to watch. He's 5'8", but he plays like he's 6'5", and he's kind of fearless. And then on the offensive line, John Todd, a junior at Parma. He was very difficult to cut off. He's kind of an up-and-comer at that position. He's started every year he's been at Parma, and I suspect he's definitely going to be in this conversation next year.
Now with our top 100 players, we've got a lot of schools represented here. I think it's 55 in total. St. Edward leads the way with 8. Mark, what does this say about Northeast Ohio to have, 100 players, 55 schools? What is the level of talent in this area?
It just shows every school has guys capable of being big-time players, potentially going to the next level and playing college football at some level. And I think it's just great for the area to have so many teams, so many competitive teams with such great players. You have to play every week or you might get a loss because the other team has plenty of talent. So it just keeps everything so competitive.
And Bill, you put a lot of time into putting this list together. Did you find it difficult because there were so many schools? Was it just sort of natural that guys popped out at you? How would you?
Yeah, it was difficult. Absolutely, it was difficult when you talk. 100 players, 55 schools, and like I said at the open, we probably could have done a list of 200 guys. So yeah, it was difficult. But the guys who were on this list did kind of jump off the page a little bit, if you will. But just because these guys, we have 100 players on this list, doesn't mean that there aren't other guys on these schools and on the schools who aren't listed who aren't worthy of being on this list or worthy of keeping your eye on.
Now, we talked a lot about offense, just as important defense. It wins championships. We'll start on the D-line. Mark, we've got, this is maybe one of the strongest areas in terms of depth in Northeast Ohio. Who's a really talented defensive lineman that catches your eye?
One of my favorite players, Bill, is Justice Alexander from Nordonia, the Michigan State commit. He's another one of these guys, very big athlete that can just rush the quarterback, 6'6", 236 pounds. He's got enough speed to get by the lineman, but he's at his best when he's just bull rushing. And I think this is a guy that could really be, is going to be a huge asset for Nordonia this season.
That's one Big Ten guy. We got another pretty talented Big Ten guy in this area, huh?
We do. Draymond Jones at St. Ignatius, the Ohio State commit, 9 sacks last season. And that number kind of caught me off guard because if you watch St. Ignatius play, he gets double-teamed a lot. And it's difficult for him to get to the quarterback, but for him to get 9 sacks with all the attention that he gets is pretty outstanding. And he'll have even better numbers this year. I'm sure he'll get more attention being that Ohio State commit, and I'm sure that'll kind of fuel him and help his game even more.
And then what about the talented lineman on Menor?
Yeah, Nico Lawtonen, he's an interior lineman. We talked about Alexander and Jones. They're both defensive ends. Nico Lawtonen is a defensive tackle who can play on the outside if asked to. Pretty athletic for his size, about 6'4", 275 pounds. But like I said, play inside, outside. 11 sacks last year from the defensive tackle position, which shows how adept he is at getting up through the middle of that offensive line and getting after quarterbacks and shutting down the run game. And a defensive leader for Menor as well. Menor is short on those from guys who graduated last season, so Nico's kind of embraced that role and taken over as a leader.
Now, we talked a little about Justice Alexander. He was supposed to be teamed up with on a defensive line, Nick Grayson. He had 17.5 sacks last year, school record. But unfortunately for Grayson and Nordonia, he suffered a knee injury that will make him miss the entire season. So I think, and I'd like to hear your opinion, that it's pretty clear cut that when you look at duos on the defensive line, Bedford's duo of Marquise Copeland and Najee Stevens-McKenzie really stands out. What do you think of that, Mark? I
agree 100%. And that's going to be interesting with Justice. Back to Nordonia real quick. How is he going to be able now, because he's going to see double teams every time now. And I think when you look at Bedford, Copeland, and McKenzie, you can't double team both of them. And so whoever you pick to double team, the other one's got the talent to really just dominate in the backfield. So I think that combination of Bedford plus a linebacking core and the defense overall, Bedford's defense should be one of the best in the area.
And when you look at a breakout player this year on the defensive line, there was a guy in Strongsville who came on pretty strong at the end of the year.
He did. Austin Platt made the switch to defensive end in week 6, and over the last 5 games of the season, he had 10 sacks, which is pretty incredible to have 10. That's 2 sacks per game over the last 5 weeks of the season against division play in the NOC Valley Division. That's really impressive for Austin Platt to pull off something like that while playing a new division, or playing a new position, excuse me. They have a lot back on defense this year, Strongsville does. So I suspect that Platt will probably get some even more one-on-one battles with a really strong front seven for the Mustangs. So 10 sacks last year, there's no reason to think he can't equal that and probably do better this season.
And if you don't know a lot about Platt, he was in for our media day, and he spoke on the Mustangs defense and where he sort of fits into that.
Pretty physical. Our defense, I'd say our number one aspect is we're a physical defense. And there's not much that's changed because we have the same defensive coordinator, so we're just going to keep getting better, playing faster, hitting harder.
Defensive line, as I alluded to earlier, I mean, it's just a deep, deep group in Northeast Ohio. But Mark, I'm going to put you on the spot and make you name 2 players right now that you think we'll see on the cleveland.com All-Star team.
I'm going to go Justice Alexander, and I'm going to go Marquise Copeland of Bedford. I think Copeland is a guy, he's continuing to get better and better, and I think you could see his sack total go up much higher.
Bill?
I'll say Nico Lawtonen for sure will be in the conversation for the All-Stars. And then I'll go maybe off the grid a little bit. We did talk about Austin Platt. If he can mimic what he did last season with 10 sacks against that kind of competition, there's no reason to think that he can't be in the conversation as well.
Now, right behind the defensive linemen stand the linebackers. And just looking at the stats, they are putting together huge numbers for tackles. Like most of these guys, we got 14 on the list, are pushing way over 100 tackles. Mark, who is one player, a linebacker, that really sticks out for you?
To me, it's Jerome Baker from Benedictine. He's a Florida commit. He just dominates all over the field, and part of the reason why he's so good at running back is his speed, and it allows him to run sideline to sideline, and you can't get by him. And I think just his ability to, with his speed, it just takes him to a whole nother level.
And Bill, you've got Baker. Everyone seems to really know about him in this area, but there are other linebackers who are putting up very strong numbers comparable to his.
Yeah, and one that I like a lot is Troy Dupree at St. Edward, really the leader of that defense, which says a lot when you talk about the talent that they have on that defense. 125 tackles last year, 9 sacks, Kent State commit. And I think more impactful than his play on the field is the fact that he's sort of the glue that holds that defense together.
And then you've got Matt Finkler of Kirtland, who, I mean, a lot of times people view Kirtland as a small school that, you know, you might question the ability of how those players would translate to Division I, but Finkler, hands down, he is someone that can play at the Division I level. He's going to play Division I college football. I mean, he's just another type of player for Kirtland. And when you look at the rest of the linebackers here, you've got guys that are not only racking up tackles, but they're the leaders of their team. Mark, who's one of those guys?
John Sensabaugh from Solon to me is the type of guy, Dave, when you look at him, he's just that heart and soul on the team, kind of plays with his emotions on his sleeve, if you'd say, and just really, every single tackle, it seems like he's somewhere, just has a knack for the ball, and I think he's going to be the leader of what should be a very good Solon defense.
Bill, who else fits into that category?
Ricky Simsick in Madison, 103 tackles last season, second team All-Ohio. Another strong team out there for Madison again this season, and he's the leader of that defense.
And then what about the one last guy from Garfield Heights in this group?
Yeah, Anthony Costellic, 127 tackles as a junior. Gets a lot of praise from other coaches in the league about how good he is, how he impacts the game, and he'll be one of the top players to watch in that division this season.
And Costellic was in for Media Day, and he talked about the increased attention that he receives during this 2014 season now.
I mean, not really. I just go out there, do my job. If I get double team, I'm getting off of it. Basically a crazy man out there.
Bill, there's a linebacker at Berea Mid-Park who I think would sort of fit the breakout category. Talk a little about him.
Yeah, Joey Bocci, I mean, he had 82 tackles last season, so maybe it's a bit of a stretch to say he's going to break out. Perhaps he already has, but he was only a sophomore last year. He's a junior this year. He's got more experience, and he'll build on that 82 tackles. His recruiting profile will increase. He's already got offers from places like Bowling Green, Toledo, a Big Ten offer from Illinois. So he's a kid to keep an eye on. Perhaps he has already broken out a bit, but he's going to be one of the top linebackers in Northeast Ohio in 2014.
Mark, give me one linebacker that would be your pick right now for cleveland.com All-Star team.
I'm going to go Troy Dupree of St. Edward. I think, as Bill alluded to earlier, everything he does on the field, it's not as important as just his mentality, the leadership, just really controlling the whole middle of the field for St. Edward. So I think Dupree, once again, should have a huge year.
And Bill, who's your choice?
Jerome Baker, I think, is a given, so I won't say Jerome Baker. I'll go with Finkler at Kirtland. I really like what he brings to that defense. He brings, you touched on it, Dave, they're a small school. Although they've had tremendous postseason success,
definitely.
they're still a small school and maybe get overlooked a bit by some people because of that. But Finkler, with his kind of higher recruiting profile, brings a bigger school feel to that team, and he's an impactful player on that defense.
Did the D linemen, did the linebackers, all that's left of the defensive backs. We've got 11 on this list. Mark, we've got a couple that are big-time recruits. Who's one of them?
Start with Sean Crawford of St. Edward, the Notre Dame commit. You look at him, not a very big player. You look at him more maybe as a speed, and granted, he's one of the fastest players in the area. But the thing that really sticks out to me is the way he plays the safety position. He's not scared to hit you, and I think that's what truly makes a safety special, and he's got it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Bill, who's another guy on this list?
Trayvon Story at Glenville, and when you talk about Glenville, particularly in the secondary, you're talking about losing players like Marshawn Lattimore and Eric Smith. So there's a lot of pressure on Trayvon Story to kind of pick up where those guys left off, and those are really big shoes to fill. 6 interceptions last year. He's got the college offers that you expect with a big-time kid from Glenville, but it'll be interesting for me to see how he handles the pressure of now being the top guy in that secondary, having to guard the other team's best receiver.
And then you got Denzel Ward at Nordonia. People will become more familiar with him as he's an Ohio State commit, lightning quick, and he's just someone that is going to make a huge impact both defensively and offensively this year. Mark, when you talk about defensive back, they sort of fall into 2 categories. You got the big hitters, and you got the really good cover guys. Who's a really strong, impact hitting defensive back, safety, corner, whatever you want to call them? Who fits into that category?
I think obviously Crawford, as I was just talking to, but I really like Mylan Golden, from Glenville. He's a big kid, has some offers from Georgia Tech, and I think he's a guy that you need those safeties to control the middle, and with his size and speed and power, he's just a great combination, and receivers are going to think twice going over the middle.
And then Bill is a kid at the school we've talked a lot about, Archbishop Hoban, who can really lay down the hammer on defense.
Yeah, Jonah Morris, 6'4" safety. He's a junior this season, got some Division I interest. Just a huge body back there, 6'4", 200 pounds, kind of laying the lumber on people. I wouldn't want to be a receiver coming across the middle against Hoban when you have a kid like that lurking back there.
And then what about the cover guys? Who's one of those natural, going to be in your uniform basically the whole game type of player?
I like Deshaun Harris at Central Catholic. This is a team, when you look at them, they really have a lot of team speed, and he's just another guy, and he does a great job of really locking down receivers. Not the biggest corner, but you really are going to have a tough day if you're throwing on him.
Bill, who are a couple of more guys that kind of fit that mold?
Well, I think 2 guys you definitely need to talk about are Michael Church at Elyria, Jordan Overton at Brush, but maybe another guy who gets overlooked in that way is Mark Walton at Menor. He had 10 pass breakups last year, and talking with Coach Steve Trevisano during the offseason, he said that Mark has really kind of blossomed into a top-tier cornerback. And Menor will see a lot of passing offense in that league when you're playing against teams like Hudson and Brunswick and Strongsville. So Mark Walton is going to be really important for that defense.
And there's a kid down at St. Vincent St. Mary, 2-time defending champion, and we got to talk about him. Mark, who's their sort of breakout defensive back?
Tyree Spate, he's a cornerback. And when you look at this team, this is a team that a lot of these guys are going to be put in situations where they've never been, obviously, with the talent of Booker and Campbell and guys they lost. So I think Spate's going to have to be one of those guys that really takes his game to the next level, but also his leadership if St. Vincent St. Mary's going to go for the 3-peat.
All right, Bill, who are your 2 picks for cleveland.com defensive backs right now?
Well, the easy one would be Sean Crawford. He was on our All-Star team last year. And then to give you another kid, I'll say Michael Church at Elyria. He's a Division I cornerback. He's a shutdown guy. Again, very important to his defense. So I'll throw him on there as my All-Star pick.
I agree with Crawford, but I'm going to go Trayvon Story of Glenville. I think, as Bill was talking about, they lost 2 great cornerbacks in Lattimore and Smith, and some teams may look at that and say, hey, let's throw on them this year. But I think if you do that, Story could be in for a big season.
All right, Bill, only 100 players can go on this list. Who are a couple defenders that missed out?
Yeah, a couple guys who jumped out as just missing out on this list. Jonathan Watts, defensive end at Stowe. Parker Knapp, big defensive tackle for St. Edward. And then we talked about shutdown corners. Dante Redwood at Midview is a guy you can include in that conversation, but unfortunately, tough cut, just missed out on this list.
Bill, Have we had any interaction from our fans on the outside world?
We have not.
Okay. Well, I have a question for both of you that I'd like to ask before we close it out here. 100 players on this list. Name one player who is a Mr. Football in Ohio contender. Start with you, Mark.
I'm going to go Jerome Baker. I think that may be the safest pick, but I think just the numbers he's going to do, and he dominates the game offensively and defensively. I think that's what really separates him from the rest of the pack.
All right, Bill, you can't go Jerome Baker.
I know, you stole my answer. I'll say Brett Keane because he's going to put up crazy numbers this season with all the weapons he has around him. I don't know if that may be to his detriment when the people who decide Mr. Football take a look at it and say, oh, well, you had all these great players, that's why you were so good. But he's a great quarterback, and he's going to put up monster numbers, probably some of the best in the state. So I think he can be in the conversation for Mr. Football.
All right, well, right after this ends, you can go on cleveland.com, and the entire list with a little breakdown on each player of our top 100 players will be on there. So definitely check that out, and join us back here at 2 p.m. tomorrow. We're unleashing our top 25 for the football season, just 2 days before it all begins. Well, 1 day for those teams that play on Thursday. So join us here for that, and we want to thank you for joining us now, and keep it locked at cleveland.com for all football coverage all year long.